Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with his Monday guest and great entrepreneur, Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Michael. How are you today?
I'm doing well. So, hey, I read an article. I think it was on the Motley Fool, but it might have been somewhere else. I read about a dozen to 20 articles a morning. This one I wanted to ask you about because I knew we were talking. They are now forecasting that mortgage apps, refi and purchase, could fall 30% next year. That's a big number. Obviously, that is built on the back of rising rates, right? Rising rates, you go from 3 to 4 next year. They're estimating about 60% of refinances will just not happen. And obviously will hurt some purchases. That's a big indicator, right? That probably means growing inventory, probably means growing days on market. But, first off, if I told you total mortgage applications would fall 30% next year because of rising rates, would you be like, I see it, or you don't see it?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. So if you're talking about the entire year cumulative by
Correct.
the end of the year, I mean, we're already down, 10% month over month, I think,
Yeah.
just because of the interest rate rise right now. So we're already seeing a 10% reduction, but, that's up and down. And it really is dependent on rates. So if rates are, if they raise interest rates and put that policy into effect and you start getting up to that, 4% number, a couple of things happen. Number one, it doesn't make sense for people to refinance because the cost of the money. Number two, if that's the case, then values are going to start to decline a little bit. So they're going to lose the equity. So they can't really tap into, what they thought they had based on, where rates are now and values are now. So, it's kind of a little step down thing that happens. And then the third thing is if people can't tap into the equity in their house, then that's a lot of revenue that would otherwise flow into the economy that won't flow in the economy. And this is the same thing similar that happened 08, 09, when the whole refinance, when the banks weren't lending anybody anything hardly, that created a big problem for the economy and a recessionary environment. And that's when the Fed started the whole, stimulus program and QE and all that. So we're not stimulus as we know it today,
Right.
But, stimulus back then in terms of, monetary policy and QE.
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing is that last point is, there's probably a lot of people doing rate and term today and that business just stops, right? If you're at 3, there's no reason you would do a rate and term if to raise the rate, right? But it's that ATM or that liquidity or that, I'm going to build a pool or buy a car or second home. I'm going to ask Matt, the mortgage guy who I talked to on Wednesdays, and maybe I can Google it. I don't know. Folks, if you're watching this and you can Google it, let me know. But I would love to know how much equity extraction we did in the last year or 2 years, because that money essentially turns off, gets cut in half. Because most people won't do it, right? But, there's people today doing refis that are taking money out and their payments going lower, right? You've been in a mortgage for 12 years, you're at 6%, equity is up. You're getting a check and your payments going down, you're happy, but it's because you went from 18 years left to 30 years. But
so, we're a credit-based economy and society, right? And that's what kills economies. That's what starts recessions and depressions is credit markets freeze up, interest rates go up. So the cost of that capital, the cost of that credit goes up. That's what's caused the biggest problems in our economic history. And that's why the Fed started that whole policy back in 08, 09, because the credit markets were just done. They just were not lending across the board. So nobody, companies, corporations, businesses, real estate, you could not borrow money for anything. Now we are 100% total flip-flop where anybody can borrow money almost in any business. I mean, when you can leverage your company and buy Bitcoin, man,
Michael Saylor. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty crazy. And for 6%, that's just phenomenal. Junk bond credit, notes at 6%.
Yeah. I think he's like $100 billion or something. He issued a company bond or MicroStrategy bond, something.
No. It was like 600 million.
Oh, 600 million. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, he's just at probably getting close to $1 billion, worth of debt that he's, issued to, between secured, unsecured,
and right now he looks like a hero. Because I think his average price is like 38 grand or something. And it's at 60.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He's doing really well right now. And I mean, anybody who bought Bitcoin, before 40,000 is doing really well now, even up to 50. But, the problem with that is it's just up and down. And, even the best experts in there are telling you, we're going to hit 100 grand and it's going to tank.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's going to probably maintain a certain level at some point as it becomes more and more adopted across the institutional spectrum and becomes more of a stable store of value. But we'll see. It's been cyclical its entire history. And, anyways, we're talking.
That was a right turn. That's okay though. Cause again, for me, there's when I read the article about 30% drop in mortgage apps, my brain went two ways. One is I want to know how much equity extraction, because I think that it, conservatively speaking, gets cut in half, right? If the average if total Americans took, I'm just making up numbers out here, $500 billion in the last year via refinances. That is, like you said, that is money in the system that is sloshing around. And most Americans suck at money management, and they bought toys and jet skis and just silly things.
Well, weddings, college tuition, all of the things that people tap home equity for, improvements, things like that, consolidating high interest debt, so, I mean, we are a consumption-based economy, first and foremost, driven by credit.
Yeah.
And that's just what makes the world go around at, the most basic levels of manufacturing all the way down through the supply chain to the consumer.
Yeah.
And that's how the world goes round. And that's why the Fed's doing what they're doing with the bond purchases and stuff like that, because the credit markets are still not healthy.
Yeah. They're not, they're better than they were, but they're not back to normal.
Well, you stop the Fed support and central bank support around the world, or the economy's done. I mean, so that's not a healthy economy. That's not a healthy situation. If you stop that injection, that IV of cash into the global economy, you're resetting to a very, very low level of, output in terms of, money flow.
I don't know if you ever thought about this, but the way you're saying this, it just gave me shivers. Let's just say, for whatever reason, every Fed, a central bank across the world stopped QE or their version of it. How high do you think the 10-year rate would be?
Yeah, I mean, probably 10%. I think it's been there before or close to it, right? So that's where you start the conversations of, how sustainable is that? What does the government do, U.S., in that regard? How do you support that? And who's going to actually issue debt? So, the smartest minds in the economy, world of economics, the smartest, most brightest economists out there can't pin and explain and understand how long can we continue this? What's the result at some point when we can't? And what does it look like when the U.S. can no longer support the debt?
What
service
happens? The debt, yeah.
So is there a global reset and workout of just debt across the board? Does everybody get together and say, okay, we're all wiping our books clean. Yeah. Let's start from scratch. Because, I mean, I don't know. I can't calculate out how sustainable this is or what the end repercussions are. And, you listen to Janet Yellen, man, she's just like, just keep it going, keep it going.
Yeah, man, she's saying some scary things here in the last 48 hours. Just go, go, go. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, you're not doing enough. You're not. I mean, it's just like, what the heck, man?
I don't know what she's looking at. Yeah.
To their credit, we've been on this path for a long time. We haven't seen hyperinflation. We've seen some inflation, but not hyperinflation at the consumer level. And the only reason we're really seeing a lot of that right now is because of, the pandemic and supply chains and things like that. If you take that out of the equation, we would still be marching on. But the argument would be, would the Fed, because they had already started pulling back, if and when they do, what does that debt workout look like globally? I mean, that would be an interesting table to be sitting at, with all of the countries around that have issued debt to each other and have bought each other's debt and credit and things like that, in terms of, okay, who's going first?
We can actually do the math. I haven't done the math, but right now, we've issued a lot of debt. The only reason it's affordable and we can make our payments is because rates are so low. I wonder where rates would have to go before 100% of our taxes would go to pay the debt. I wonder what that would be. It's probably 5%, 4.5%. I mean, it's probably not much higher than where it is now. It's certainly not 10. At 10, we're done.
Right. Which, by the way, that's how you extract liquidity out of the economy. So all of this liquidity that's been pumped into the economy, how do you extract it out? You tax it out.
Yeah.
So, and they're already starting that, talking about taxing unrealized capital gains. You and I had that conversation. Yeah. I think they've tabled that one. They're like,
so.
That's
a non-starter.
Yeah, I didn't think that was going to happen, because how do you even calculate that? And then what happens when it goes the other way? I mean, that makes zero sense. So
crazy. So the other thing on mortgages, right? So the first thing I was thinking about, that's a lot of extraction, right? There's less money flowing around, less college, less mortgage. But then the other side is it's going to hurt purchases, right? And again, like kind of like we talked about in the first one, you're going to get less yes answers. You're going to get less people looking to buy. It's going to cause inventory finally to rise. We can finally get up above 1.3. Prices will certainly stop inflating. At some point, they will flatten. Maybe they come down in some areas. But yeah, I mean, higher rates will slow the economy down. I mean, that's what I took from that. Right? So if we get 30% less total mortgage apps, the economy is going to slow down because there's less of everything, I think, because that's a big part of our economy.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. And, here's something for everybody, watching and listening that's in the real estate world thinking, okay, how do I take advantage of this? Let's say credit markets freeze up, values drop, but homeowners are trapped because they have no equity and they can't sell to pay the debt off. How do you make a deal in that environment if the numbers don't work? Well, that's where the subject to comes in. So, you're going to see a lot more subject to transactions like it did back in 08, 09. You'll have cash purchases, but if there's people that just can't sell because they owe more on their house than it's worth, and they just can't walk away from it for a cash deal, it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. You might see some short sales like we did, but at the end of the day, you'll see a lot of subject to deals being done where somebody will deed the property over to you. Yep. You take over the, making payments of the mortgage. They still stay tied to that mortgage. It's in their name. Mm-hmm. So it could affect them moving forward. But if they've lost equity, they don't have a down payment to move forward with anyways.
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of those types of deals, being done in an environment like that where, people are trapped and can't get out, but they have to move.
Yeah. I think, again, I'm kind of, my spidey senses feel a recession coming, higher rates coming at the same time. And that is going to cause perhaps the great environment for sub two. I really do. Because again, that person that's in the home has 28 years left, but their mortgage is 2.8%. That is going to be valuable to someone. There's just no equity. So you got to find someone else who, sees value in the mortgage.
And what's a recession? So, the technical definition, is a 10% reduction in GDP for growth for, a number of quarters or something. I can't remember, but
2 quarters.
Yeah.
Back to back.
So it's not like this huge thing. We have recessions all the time. They come and go. And right now, we had one self-induced with the pandemic, and we've got one now with the supply chain crisis, potentially causing the next because we can't get the goods, out to the economy quick enough, for people to consume to keep that ball going. So that's like a, another self-imposed, bomb that's dropping right there is that whole supply chain thing. Yeah. I read a neat article. You can Google this, but there was a trucker that's been in the industry for 20 years that wrote an article, what's really going on with the supply chain crisis and why can't we really solve it? It was really interesting from his perspective of what's going on at the ports. Even if you went 24/7, the backlog is all there, and then the containers and the chassis and then the warehousing, there's not enough space in the warehouse to even, distribute stuff. And he's like, man, you're not going to solve this problem anytime soon. And it's, they can't get people at the ports and they can't get that running efficient enough to get the trucks in and out. He's like, I used to be able to do 2 or 3 of these a day, where now I'm sitting in line for 3 or 4 hours. I'm lucky to get 1 done a day.
Wow. Yeah. That doesn't bode well for fixing the supply chain anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty interesting. It was a neat article.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's going to be kind of the topic of number 3. I see some similarities between this decade and the 70s, but it's a little wrinkle that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. Before we get there, Greg, how can people follow you and get part of your world?
Yep, gregdickerson.com. Go check it out on my YouTube podcast. Everything's there, gregdickerson.com.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.